I mean, you could call yourself Creole or whatever you wanted to, but you still had to go with the black, so you was black as far as I'm concerned.
Their homes for other parts of the nation where their origins were not known and where they easily merged into the socially privileged white society. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. And if you've been on my channel for the past year that I've had it, you know that this channel began with my own family story on my mom's side. And that brought me down to Natchitoches, Louisiana. And it was only like 1 or 2 years ago that I first heard the term Cane River Creole. Now, after putting some pieces together, talking with family members, I realized that my family was Creole from that area, but a Cane River Creole was like another layer deep. And this is something that I want to keep exploring. Now, there is a Facebook group, or as a Facebook page, and it's called Cane River Stories, and it has the most incredible interview clips I've ever seen. I love it. I want to share one that I found with you today, actually two. And so I would love to get in touch with this person. I don't know who runs the page. So if you know who does, I would love to talk with them. Their work is amazing. The Cane River is a river that I actually filmed a lot on when I was doing my Finding Lola series. I spent a lot of time sitting by the Cane River and reflecting and talking and just kind of reflecting on the family. And I don't know your family story if you are at the beginning of that journey, in the middle, there is no end. But I bet that there is a place or two that holds that meaning for you. That you know very recent ancestors were there in that area and they looked at that area or that landscape or that land, and a lot of it has still remained unchanged so that you can kind of take in what they took in. And I don't know what it is. Like, I don't want to be spooky, but it did something to me to be there on the edge of the Cane River, and I want to go back. That's what it did to me. I want to go back. So I want to share this interview and talk about two things. He's going to talk about during segregation, what was happening to Creoles in Louisiana during segregation, and also talking about coming home and what does that look like. And I think whether or not you have Creole heritage, whether or not you have Louisiana heritage, there is a place where you know without a doubt, like, my family is from this place. Maybe you don't know all the places, but you know this place. And so this is one of those places for me. So I want to share this interview with you. I actually have not watched this interview in full with you. It's just 1 minute long, but I wanted to watch it together. So I'm excited to do that. Here's the video, and I just want to make sure you can see who this is, Cane River Stories. And wow, their work is tremendous. And it said, during segregation, you could call yourself Creole, but you still had to go with the blacks. You couldn't drink out of the white water fountain. I think this is his answer. So let's go ahead and... Some people left here and they wanted to be white, so they went as white and being white. But myself, preferably, I said I was black because you couldn't go where the white people was going back in the day, so what else were you? I mean, you could call yourself Creole or whatever you wanted to, but you still had to go with the black, so you was black as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, you couldn't drink out the white water fountains. They had white only on the restrooms. You couldn't go in there. So, and the cafes and whatnot, if they was white, they might have had, some of them had places where you could go in the back and eat back in the kitchen. And some of them you didn't. So you weren't white, so you couldn't go in the front door. All right, before we react to that one, I want to watch the second one with you, and it says Coming Home. They grew up here, and this is home to them, and as they think of their grandparents, they might have not even known them, but they are all buried here. So this is where their roots is, and that's why they all call it home, right? Because that's where their roots was. I mean, that's where their great-grandparents and their parents, and they're all buried over here. And so this is home to them. They can go all about, and quite a few people
after they died, they left word that they wanted to be buried back here. Right of them, they shipped them back and buried them over here. I guess call that coming back home for the last time.
Now, before I respond to those two clips, I want to read a quote from Elizabeth Shown Mills. Both Miss Elizabeth Shown Mills and the late Gary Mills have contributed more to my knowledge of my family than anyone I know. I have an excerpt saved from the genealogist journal from spring 1985. Miss Mills wrote, she said, in rural parishes such as Natchitoches, many third caste communities dwindled noticeably after the Civil War, as increasingly restrictive Jim Crow laws whittled away at the social advantages their members had traditionally enjoyed in Louisiana. The Des Maizières and the kin of Campty were no exception. And this is my family line. Lighter members of the community left their homes for other parts of the nation where their origins were not known and where they easily merged into the socially privileged white society. This process did sometimes require the cutting of family ties between the new life and the old life in Louisiana. And in more recent years, some offspring of those who went Caucasian, she says, have attempted to recross that nebulous color line, at least academically. As they explore the full diversity of their heritage, their efforts to discover what their immediate forebears sought to veil can be either frustrating or rewarding. Now, to me, I mean, this is like prophetic. I mean, this was a year before I was even born, and Miss Mills wrote this. So let's go back to that interview. The man that's being interviewed, first of all, is talking about those who went as white, and I think that's passed as white, passé blanc, like all of those phrases that we hear. And he's saying it doesn't matter how you identified, though. If they saw that you weren't white, then you were black. And then that's that binary mindset, that the increasingly restrictive Jim Crow laws and social norms of the time, even if they weren't necessarily in law at the time, that was how society was splitting. And, this man's saying that being Creole didn't save you from that. And I just thought it was really interesting because Ms. Mills here is saying that, ostensibly she's saying before the Civil War, there was a three caste system. There was these three groups. You had, the higher level of people who were, the free white people. You had people who were enslaved at the bottom, and then people of color who were enslaved at the bottom. And then there was this middle group of people who didn't really occupy either space, but they were accepted into most societies, and they were able to, have economic freedom and have social freedom to a point until after the Civil War. And that's when things started to change. And what was so amazing, I think, about studying your family story is that wherever your family story takes place, you may have some things where you're like, oh, wow, my family, we had such a weird experience here, or isn't it crazy that my grandpa did this over here? But when you start researching the history of the area and what was going on in the world, most of the time you'll find that that ancestor was kind of being swept away in something much larger than themselves. And so hearing this gentleman talk, obviously he has seen a lot of things. I think it is a privilege, an absolute privilege, to be able to sit here and share my heart with you and be exposing what this journey looks like on all sides. And it's also a little humbling to see that I was already called out for what I was going to do before I was even born and knew I was going to do it. This is exactly me, that not necessarily trying to recross this nebulous color line, but there's academic desire to try to understand something that really I'm never going to be able to understand. And I love how she says, as they explore the full diversity of their heritage, you're trying to uncover what your ancestors wanted to hide. It can be frustrating or rewarding. And It's both. Honestly, I feel so rewarded doing this. I know those of you who have started doing the reconnecting journey with your family too, but man, it can be so frustrating. It can be terribly frustrating. You know, it often feels to me like walking a tightrope between history and identity. On one hand, you want to acknowledge and embrace the history and say, this is what happened. This is the truth of what happened. And on the other hand, we want to be honest and say, but this is how I was raised. This was what my experience was. And oftentimes they're not the same thing. The second interview that he said, the idea that, people, is really just what Miss Mills said. It's the same thing. People are reconnecting. Oftentimes they're finding that their great-grandparents were from Cane River area. And now they want to reconnect. And I don't think this is unique to Cane River Creoles. I think that this generational thing is happening across all backgrounds and all heritages. I think that a lot of people are ready to take that step. And I don't know why. I can speak for myself and say that for me, it really had to do with, I think, the passing of my grandparents and just me getting old enough to not be stupid anymore, right? And to realize, like, hey, I'm going to die too. And what am I going to pass on? What do I know about the family? What have I saved for the family to pass on to the next generation? Whether or not you have kids or not, very likely you have nieces or nephews or younger cousins, other people in your life, in your family, who share this story with you. And the idea of getting brought back to a place to be buried where you didn't grow up and coming home, I never thought about it, but it makes sense to me. It does. There's something really beautiful about it. So let me know if you know about Cane River Creoles, and even if you don't, where are you on this journey? Are you the person that has been preserving everything? Are you just dipping your baby toe into this? Maybe you haven't even started and don't know what cult you just joined. Just kidding, it's not a cult, really. But reconnecting with our roots, I think there's just something deep down in all of us that we want that. And some of us have to work harder for that than others, but it is absolutely worth the work. And just like Miss Mills says here so eloquently, it will be frustrating, but it will also be rewarding. If you would like to support the channel and the work I'm doing here or watch these ad-free, please jump over to my Patreon. I was thinking about doing my first live stream here on YouTube for YouTube members and Patreon supporters. I'm still trying to figure that out. So let me know what you think about that, and we'll talk soon.